Have you ever wondered about the secrets behind China's massive population? As the most populous country in the world, how did China reach such staggering numbers throughout history? In this video, we'll explore the historical, cultural, and political factors that shaped China's population growth. Let's begin. First, let's talk about the policies Chinese emperors implemented to support their farmers. Throughout history, Chinese emperors boosted agricultural productivity to ensure that large cities and dense populations could be sustained. During the Ming and Qing dynasties, massive irrigation projects were initiated and agricultural reforms were enacted. For instance, did you know that Emperor Yongle of the Ming dynasty built vast canal systems? These grand projects were among the essential factors that kept China's enormous population thriving. One of the largest sources of sustenance for China's population came from the mighty Yangtze and Yellow rivers. These two rivers were the super engines of agriculture. By flooding their banks and renewing the soil, they made large-scale food production possible. In fact, rice produced in the Yangtze Valley could feed a family of 6 for an entire year from just 1 acre of land. The Yellow River, too, enriched the land with its fertile alluvial soil, making agricultural production flourish. These two rivers were in essence the heartbeat of China, laying the groundwork for a population boom. In rural areas, another major factor behind population growth was the prevalence of large families. In Chinese rural communities, every child represented additional labor in the fields. Large families, particularly, became symbols of wealth and status within the rural economy. Did you know that in rice paddies, children would begin working as young as 6 years old? The more children a family had, the stronger they became. Children were, in many ways, the hidden asset of rural families. In addition to these practical strategies, Chinese culture also contributed to population growth through its belief in lucky numbers. Chinese families believed that the number 8 symbolized prosperity and wealth. This is why many parents planned for their children to be born on dates associated with the number 8. For example, even the Beijing Olympics in 2008 famously began on 08/08/2008 at precisely 8:08 p.m. Families guided by this belief timed births in hopes that fortune would smile upon them. By the mid-20th century, childbirth had turned into something of a competition in rural China. The more children a family had, the more respect they earned. In one village, it's said that a family with 14 children became the pride of the entire community. In fact, they even won an award for having the most children. The number of children a family had became a key determinant of social status, which fueled population growth in these regions. Mao Zedong believed that a large population was essential to making China a powerful nation. One of Mao's famous quotes is, "If we properly educate 800 million Chinese people, we can move mountains." In the 1950s, he launched campaigns encouraging population growth, and millions of families were guided to have more children. Mao saw human power as a national treasure, and this policy led to a rapid expansion of China's population. Indeed, one of the largest baby booms in history occurred in China during the 1950s. Over the course of 30 years, China's population surged from 540 million to over 1 billion. Just imagine a population increase equivalent to the entire population of the United States, year after year. This massive growth was intertwined with Mao's industrial and agricultural ambitions, which helped position China as a global force. From 1950 to 1953, the Korean War provided a stark example of how China wielded its population as a strategic military advantage. During this conflict, China faced off against United Nations forces and became famous for its human wave tactics. One of the Chinese People's Volunteer Army's most notable strategies was to leverage its enormous population by launching overwhelming waves of soldiers against enemy forces. These tactics, quite simply, involved using sheer human numbers to crush the enemy. It's said that thousands of Chinese soldiers would attack in continuous waves, with fresh troops being sent in constantly. This approach wore down the psychological resolve of UN forces, forcing them into errors. The sheer size of these human waves caught American and Allied troops off guard, as they hadn't anticipated facing such overwhelming numbers. In one phase of the war, UN commanders reported, "We've run out of ammunition," but the enemy never runs out of soldiers. This remains one of the clearest examples of how China's vast population was transformed into a military advantage. According to legend, during these waves, some Chinese soldiers carried no weapons, holding only flags as they led the charge. The armed soldiers would follow in the waves behind them. The first waves sacrificed themselves to weaken the defense and scatter enemy lines. This use of human power became a game-changing tactic in the war. This approach showcased how China utilized its vast population as a tool of warfare, an intriguing and surprising example of how sheer numbers can shift the course of history. Through such strategies, China gained strategic superiority in the Korean War, demonstrating its military prowess on the global stage. Mao's communist regime didn't stop at war strategies. It made population growth a state policy. Mao viewed a large population as both an economic and military asset. In rural communes, families were encouraged to have more children. In 1958, the Great Leap Forward accelerated population growth even further. Although famine temporarily affected population numbers, the government's interventions soon restored growth. But population growth wasn't just driven by policies. In the 1960s, China experienced a major health revolution thanks to the barefoot doctors who worked in rural areas. Infant mortality rates dropped dramatically, and families were able to raise healthier children. This health revolution was another key reason behind China's population boom. At that time, about 200 out of every 1,000 babies in rural China would die in their first few years. But with the help of barefoot doctors, this rate dropped significantly. By the 1980s, China's population had grown so rapidly that the government had to take control with the introduction of the one-child policy. This policy was meant to curb population growth, but also led to unforeseen consequences. In rural areas, some families didn't adhere to the policy, and so-called hidden children were born off the official record. This led to speculation that China's true population might be higher than official figures suggest. It's said that when families had twins during the one-child policy, they would sometimes hide one of the children. Only the family knew of the child's existence, and the child was never registered with the government. In some rural areas, there are tales of families keeping hidden twins secret for years. This urban legend underscores how people found ways to navigate strict population controls. Though unverified, these stories remain common in rural China. Another consequence of the one-child policy was the imbalance in gender ratios. Families often preferred to have male children, and as a result, for every 100 girls, 115 boys were born. Today, over 30 million men in China face the possibility of never finding a wife. This surplus of men has had profound effects on China's demographic structure and social dynamics. Lastly, let's talk about the rapid urbanization that swept across China. Over the past 30 years, millions of people have migrated from rural areas to cities. Today, over 100 Chinese cities have populations of over 1 million. Mega cities like Shanghai and Beijing grew rapidly as millions of rural migrants flocked to these urban centers, making China home to some of the most densely populated cities in the world. One example of this urban explosion can be seen in the city of Chongqing, one of China's most populous cities. In 2008, a massive traffic jam paralyzed the city, revealing just how unprepared the infrastructure was for such rapid population growth. On a single day, nearly 1 million people tried to leave the city for vacation, resulting in a 100-kilometer traffic jam in the city center. People were stuck in their cars for 3 days, struggling to find food and water. Some even abandoned their cars to walk home. This incident serves as a striking reminder of how quickly growing populations can overwhelm urban areas. As you can see, many factors have contributed to China's enormous population, from agricultural reforms by emperors to Mao's policies, from rural family strategies to beliefs in lucky numbers. Today, China's population stands at approximately 1.4 billion. That's nearly 4 times the population of the United States, 331 million, and almost 10 times that of Russia, 146 million. China's population is also around 20 times that of the United Kingdom, 67 million. This immense population not only makes China an economic powerhouse, but also a key player in shaping global social and cultural trends. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also, let us know your thoughts on China's population growth in the comments below. And make sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss out on more fascinating content like this. See you in the next video.